Prowse-Bishop, and this is the Virtual Business Show. There have been some discussions on various forums for VAs recently about cheap labour providers offering services for $5 an hour, for example, and usually these relate to offshore providers. But it seems that there's now a new breed of contractor offering services for this price right here in Australia. This has raised a few eyebrows on various social media sites and lists, especially when a client has been approached by or heard of these contractors and then asks whether you'll work for the same rate. When a client asks if you'd work for $5 an hour, firstly, use it as an opportunity to educate them on your status as a business owner. Relate it back to them being a business owner, and would they work for that rate? Overseas providers charge that rate because their cost of living is different, tax is different, and if they want to pay $5 an hour, then perhaps they should be looking for offshore. You don't need to justify your rates to anyone. You're an independent contractor and you set your own rate. Just like the mechanic, the plumber, the lawyer all set their own rate and don't expect us to question it. If we don't like it, we find an alternative provider. It may well be that the provider here in Australia offering those cheap hourly rates operates much like the ones we've seen in the US and Canada. They have a local business, but are hiring workers in cheap labour countries to do the client work and paying them more like $2 an hour. It's more than likely the person the client has been in contact with isn't the one providing the actual service. Secondly, you can use this as an opportunity to educate them on what working with offshore providers could likely mean for them. Different ethics, potential language issues, cultural differences, a lack of understanding of how we do business in this country, and so on. Some of these officers also use the cheap rate to lure you in. Then you find every little adjustment to the work is billed at a much higher rate, or you don't have ownership of your intellectual property, or some other nuisance to running your business. The question was raised whether this is actually legal, since Australia has minimum wage rules and employment law covering employees. It's important to remember that contractors are a different ballgame to employees. They set the rate. If a contractor is willing to work for $5 an hour, then that's their business. Employment law only comes in if you're employed. Minimum wage rates then kick in. The client isn't circumventing employment law when they work with a contractor unless they're doing a range of other things that would define the worker as an employee. The Australian Tax Office offers a checklist to see whether a contractor is in fact a contractor or whether they would be considered an employee for tax purposes. There's one for the building and construction industry and one for everyone else. I'll include a link to the tool in the description for the podcast below. So to answer the question, can they do that? Quite simply, yes, they can do that, provided the other criteria for independent contracting are being met. As an industry, it is so important for Australian VAs individually and via their networks to continue to educate the public and potential clients about what working offshore means as opposed to what working in-country means. Personally, I won't compete with people who are happy to take $5 an hour, and frankly, I don't want to work with clients who only want to pay that and don't see the value in what I offer them and their business. So I thank all those contractors who work for Nix. They keep those clients off my phone and away from me, allowing me to spend my time providing the best service I can to those clients who actually appreciate me. Someone asked whether we have any protection from this sort of thing as an industry. Unfortunately, when you become a contractor, you go it alone pretty much, and your contract is designed to protect you, which is why you always should have one. We have no union, only awesome groups who should be advocating for our industry and educating the public, as most of them do. We could also be educating the individuals working here as VAs, many of whom are migrants from cheaper labour countries, what working for that rate might imply, given the cost of living here is so much more than their home country and what they're used to. But when it comes to companies touting for work who pass it on to offshore providers, there is nothing we can do to stop them. Clients aren't doing anything illegal by hiring contractors at any rate that the agreement between the client and contractor stipulates. If they negotiate a rate both are happy with, there's nothing anyone can do about it. Some may think this isn't fair, but then that's because that individual wouldn't work for that rate. Nor should they, but it doesn't mean the contractor working for $5 an hour is doing anything wrong if they're happy with that rate. Independent means exactly that. Independent not only of the client's insistence on a particular rate, but also of colleagues who think they're undercutting or not working for a fair rate. We start to tread on dangerous ground when we, either individually or as an industry, think we can start stipulating what we should all be charging as fair. Price fixing comes to mind, but it also reminds me of a few years ago when the unions tried very hard to kill off the independent contractor industry and revert everyone to worker status. If you're looking for something that's unfair, you can't go much past that. I feel we do, unfortunately, as an industry and individuals, spend an inordinate amount of energy worrying about cheap providers and fairness. For me, of course it's fair if the contractor believes it is. I don't think it's being unfair to me that they charge a cheaper rate. As I said, it keeps the clients who don't value my service away from me, and then everyone's happy. Feel free to post your comments on this issue in the comments section below or on our Facebook page. I'm Prowse-Bishop. Thanks so much for listening.